This is Project 5 Letterfold Brochure, and we are in Stage 1, creating documents that fold. Please make sure that you read this section very carefully. If you are in graphic design, these things will pop up at you quite often. It's good information, and it's going to give you a lot of basics on folding paper to make printed documents. There are some things you need to be aware of as far as terminology. Trim size is the size of the flat piece of paper. For example, if you are printing a letter size sheet of paper, the trim size is 8.5 by 11 inches. Most pages printed for commercial output on a commercial device are combined with other pages on an extremely large press sheet. You've got a really big sheet of paper with multiple pages being printed on it, and it is then cut to the proper size from the press sheet, and that's what your final cut is from. The part that you cut away is usually a part of the bleed allowance. The bleed allowance is how much outside the trim sheet the printer requires to have printed so that when they trim it, the images and color that's on that page is going to bleed off. The live area is the safe space within the trim area where you can put important content. You wouldn't want to place something too close to an edge because the presses can have a margin of error, and if you have something written at the very edge of the sheet and the sheet moves a little bit through the press, it could get cut off. So the safe area is the opposite of the bleed, and it is where important content can go, and it will be untouched during the trim process. If you look at the diagram on the top of page 234, you will see how the outside of the brochure is set up. On the outside of the sheet, you will see that the fold-in is on the left-hand side. On the inside of the brochure, if you flip the page over, you're going to have the fold-in, which is a narrower piece of paneling, is going to be on the right-hand side. We have to make those pieces a little bit smaller so that the pages will fold properly. It's just usually 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch, but heavier paper may require the panel to be made a little bit smaller. You have to understand the relationship between the front and back. This is kind of where I wanted to show an example up here where this is the front page, this is the back page, and this is the piece that would be folded inside. And of course, there's another side that would be printed. So let me close this, and we're going to start by building a brochure from scratch. Make sure you have downloaded all of the files that you need from the student file web page. The folder is called Culture, and there are a number of items in there that we're going to need to complete this piece. We're going to start by creating a new document. It is going to be called Rack 4x9. We're making 4x9-inch panels, so our overall paper size when completed is going to be 12 by 9. So it's slightly larger than a normal sheet of paper. We're going to have 6 artboards, and you want to select grid by row. 3 columns. The width, of course, is 4 inches by 9 inches. If you don't have inches, make sure you select that. We need portrait mode. Make sure you have no bleed. We don't want to set the bleed yet. We're going to set the bleed a little bit later. We want CMYK with a high raster effect, and you can say OK. And this is the setup that we're going to have. I've already selected my artboard tool, so I can move on with the next section. As you can see, we have our artboard set up 1 to 3 going across the top, 4, 5, and 6 across the bottom. We selected to have 0 spacing, so they are run right on top of each other. And let's save this into our Cultures folder. With your artboard tool active, select your first artboard. Remember that we need to make that artboard a little narrower so that it will fold correctly. We're going to select the center right reference point. That's going to be used as our base. Rename your first artboard to outside fold in. And now we're going to let the computer do a little bit of math. Our reference point is the center right side, which should hold the right side static. Put your insertion point inside the width field. And we're going to let the computer do a little bit of math work for us. We need to make this panel 1/8 of an inch narrower. So we're going to put in a minus 0.125 and hit enter. Now we're going to see 3.88 inches up there, but that's because there is a little bit of a hiccup in our program that the field up here rounds off. The width is actually 3.875, but it will round up in here because that's all the values it will hold. The measurement will be correct, however. Now we can rename the center artboard outside center mailer, because that's going to be the place where you could put an address. The outside right is artboard 3. And that is the front. So we're going to put that reminder in there for us. Artboard 4 is going to be renamed inside left. And artboard 5 inside center. Artboard 6 is inside fold in. Now remember that fold in needs to be a little bit narrower because that is the flip side of fold out. We are going to do the same thing up here in our width, but this time we're going to change the reference point to the left side to hold that as our anchor point, and we're going to again minus 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch, and it should, yes, and you can see the offset right up here. We're going to move the artboards around a little bit so that we can line them up. So click inside the inside left artboard to select it. We're using our artboard tool. We want to drag this down and that 1/8 inch to the right. So we're going to move down and you'll see that this aligns to that other edge, and we want to get this moved about 1 inch away. So watch your Y coordinate, and it doesn't necessarily need to be exact, but we want this down a little bit so that there's some space between the two artboards. Move the inside center until it lines up with the inside left. It should pretty much try to pop into place. And the same thing with the outside fold in until it pops into place. These should all be nicely lined up again. You can double check it and see, yes. Now we're going to drag and create a new artboard that overlaps all 3 of the outside panel artboards. So let me move up to the outside, and I'm going to, at intersect, I'm going to click and drag and cover all 3 of those artboards. There is a reason for this. These are going to be the artboards that identify the sides of the brochure. When your layout is complete, these would be the 2 artboards that we're going to output as the single PDF file, not the individual 6 artboards that we've just created. Those are to define the size of the panels. If you need to, you can go in and make adjustments if you haven't had them pop into place. We want it to match perfectly. This new artboard is going to be called Outside, and we're going to do the same thing for the lower 3 panels. And whoa, that's not what I want to do. Intersect. Nope. Okay, let's try over here. Okay, if that happens to you, then start drawing slightly outside, and then you can go back in and select and adjust the size of that artboard, because it may try to pick up the artboard that already exists. Name the new artboard Inside. Select Outside and Inside and drag those to the top of your artboard panel. Now we're going to create our margin guides and our bleed guides. We want to be on the outside artboard. Choose the rectangle tool in the Tools panel and select the default Stroke and Fill. If you don't have your rulers up, go to View and Show Your Rulers. Use your Smart Guides to snap to the existing artboard edge. Now let me pick up my artboard again. No, that didn't solve anything. I'm going to go to View, Fit Artboard in Window, and with my rectangle tool, I'm going to create a rectangle that covers the entire artboard. Use your Smart Guides to make sure it snaps exactly. Now remember that the outside artboard is the sum of the 3 individual panels. One was 4, the other was 4, the other one was 3.875. So this is the width of the rectangle that we created. We can check that up here, 11.875. In your proxy, in your transform panel, and choose the center reference point. We're going to increase the width by 1/4 of an inch. I need you to turn off the constraint because we don't want to have it added proportionally. We want to add the exact number. So we're going to pick 11.875 and we're going to add 0.25 or 1/4 of an inch to that. And you can see it increases both sides. We're going to also add 1/4 of an inch to the top and bottom. With the resized rectangle still selected, go to View, Guides, Make Guides. Do you see how all of a sudden that rectangle doesn't really exist anymore, but instead we have a blue line that goes all the way around that shows our bleed area. Go back to your rectangle tool again and do the same thing for your inside artboard. Okay, now we've got the bleeds added. We're going to put in our margin guides. Next, we're going to go into our artboards, and you need to select the outside fold to make that the active artboard. Probably want to zoom out a little bit. And with the rectangle tool, we're going to make a rectangle that aligns with that panel. Our proxy should still show that the center is our reference, and we need to change the height and width again. So we're going to this time subtract 1/2 an inch from the inside and the outside. And this is going to set our live area. Go again to View, Guides, Make Guides.